If you just read my journals, it wouldn't read very well because real life is not so serial and linear. Often the idea doesn't even look that good in the moment. It took a few months before the word Yuppiechef was even mentioned. I didn't even think it was important enough. A lot more of success might be more to do with things like luck and timing than it is about the inspirational idea. But a lot of them don't stay in business long enough to get that lucky. He sat with us and said, please, it's my birthday, take my money.
Heard you describe it as the retail casino where you're forced to go double or quits every year.
No one gives you millions of dollars without wanting many more millions back.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Handwritten book launch. Woo! Yeah! I am John Bradshaw. I run a podcast called the Non-Fiction Book Club Podcast where we talk to leaders about the books that shaped them. We've had Andrew on, but tonight we have something extra special. We have Andrew Smith, who I think you mostly know or know of, who also happens to be an avid reader. Such an avid reader that when you open your book, you will find that at the back, he's got a whole lot of book reviews for you with additional reading. So extra value there. But Andrew, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here tonight to talk a little bit about the Yuppiechef story and the Handwritten book. Welcome.
Thank you, John. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. Give him a hand. Yeah, let's give a hand. Yeah. All right. Well, It is a quite extraordinary book. I think this is a complete gift to us. So thank you so much for writing it. I'm going to start at the beginning and just read through the book, and then later Andrew can comment on it. This is from the first chapter. Publicly, as co-founder of Yuppiechef, I smiled for the cameras and spoke of exponential growth. Privately, in my handwritten journals, I wrestled with the fear of failure. Handwritten is the story of both. Entrepreneurs appear to be optimistic, confident people. That is because they're always selling. Skipping a bit. Selling does not mean lying, but it is not the same as telling the whole story. Right. This is a completely extraordinary book, and I think part of that is because of the fact that you've always been such a writer. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the process of how this book came to be?
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm actually a writer in the sense of writing a book. I think, like a lot of people, I write emails, and you know,
books just a lot of emails, right?
yeah, and newsletters and WhatsApps, and I didn't think of myself as being able to write a book. And one of the problems was that I don't think I've got a very good memory, and so the idea of writing any type of biography or memoir, we go, you know, what happened in 2008? And I have no idea. But one of my great advantages as I have written a journal, and I've written a journal almost every day. I mean, the marketing says every day, but you know, that's a little bit of, you know, marketing, John. It's your thing.
Well, most of the days, don't sell them short. There's a lot of journals.
There are a lot of journals. I have a box at home full of books of journals, and so I knew that it was going to be based something around that, and that allowed me to be very honest. That's exactly what happened on that day. That's what I was thinking. But it also added something of a different dimension that I don't think a lot of books have got, because I think when we remember the past, we remember these sort of grand narrative arcs. But when you go and look at what was I feeling on that day, it takes it into the present tense. So I thought there could be something, but my initial idea to write a book was, you know, maybe for my kids to read, and when they're older. They haven't actually read it yet, but you know, when they're older, they'll want to.
They can read. They
can read. Yeah. They're 18 and 20. They can read. Yeah. But and maybe that was a bit of self-defense. If I say I'm going to write a book, and then it doesn't work out like I hope. So I didn't tell many people. I did tell you that I was writing a book, but I said you couldn't read it, because that was my second defense. Was, you know, let me keep it a little bit quiet for as long as I can. And so Shane and I left Yuppiechef in August 2022, and I started transcribing my journals. So I went back to the beginning, and I read through them, and I typed out not every single word, with the words that were related to what might go into business memoir. And that took a year. So that took until November 2023, and I had 2 books worth, actually, sort of double this volume worth of journals. And I gave it to my writing coach, Kathy, and I said, read my journals and let me know what you think. And she said, yes, I think there's a book there. But at that stage, I still didn't know. Was it going to be one of those business books, you know, where chapter 1 is how to come up with an idea, and chapter 2 is how to raise money? But we agreed that it would be a narrative. It would just start at the beginning and work its way through, and then actually quote the journals fairly often. 2024 was when I wrote it from beginning to end. It was much too long. 2025 is when it was edited. 2026 is when it's become a physical product. So it's almost 4 years in the making. That's the overview. You can dive into.
No, I think it's fantastic, and the excerpts from the journals are one of the magical parts of the book as you tell the story. But what was that experience like, going back this many years on to those journals and re-experiencing the events, knowing how they turned out?
Yeah, so there's an amazing amount of empathy, I think, that I could see for my younger self, because the thing when you look back on something that you wrote in the moment, and it doesn't have to be a journal, it could be an email, it could be even a WhatsApp or whatever it is, but on that day when you don't know what's coming and you write with all the doubt and excitement and anxiety and pressure, and then later when you reflect back on that, there is something really interesting that happens. And I, from what I know about therapy and psychology and all, reliving those and telling those stories over and over is something which provides a healing and a closure and all that. So not just that I had the journals and that I read them, but that I actually typed them the first year. And then the second year that I went and effectively had to interpret them, because journals do not make a good book, despite what Diary of Adrian Moore would have you believe.
A classic.
Yeah. It's if you just read my journals, it wouldn't read very well, because real life is not so serial and linear. It's a lot more of multiple things happening at once. Today, I'm really excited about this. Tomorrow, no, it's a bit of a bad idea. The next day, maybe it is good. But then there's also these 5 other things that are happening at once, and it's way too much. And when you're now trying to turn it into a story, you have to kind of pick it apart and see each thread through from beginning to end. So there's a lot of interpretation. But there's also what you would say reflection, particularly around other people. So when I write in the moment how I'm disappointed or upset or angry or about something that's happened with someone, because the most interesting and the most tense part in the books are what happens with other people. And so when I got to do that multiple times, some things shifted in me, and over time there became maybe less anger or maybe less bitterness, because you kind of realize, okay, now I see, with some space, I see that I was trying my best and they were trying their best, and actually this wasn't what it felt like in the moment it was.
And just having the grace for yourself and for those people. But there must have been, as you're reading through, there must have been, given you know much more about leading, much more about business, there must have been some sort of face palm moments where you're like, no, Andrew, don't do that, stop.
Yeah, there were many times. I mean, I guess what's interesting as well is where I missed things that are so obvious. So one of the Yuppiechef anecdotes is that we didn't start Yuppiechef as this blinding idea that just hit us an inspiration, and we dropped everything else, and we sold everything we had and went and pursued Yuppiechef. We had been working in web development, Shane and I, and selling our time by the hour, and then we wanted to get into e-commerce because we wanted to sell a product. And we started with bug zappers and rat zappers and flags, and you can read about what those are. And Yuppiechef was the next idea. But in all the time that we were coming up with the Yuppiechef and coming up with the name, I didn't even mention it in my journals. It took a few months before the word Yuppiechef was even mentioned. I didn't even think it was important enough to say that. And then we, after we launched Yuppiechef, within a few months, I said to Shane, Shane, I don't think this Yuppiechef thing's working. I think we should focus on flags, because flags was doing quite well.
There's still a massive gap in the market.
Online flags. And when we, there's a few Yuppiechef employees in the room here, and when we did onboarding with them, I would tell them the story, and I would say, and if we'd had my way, you would be working for a flag company. And they would kind of look at me a little bit like, I don't know
Chuckle
if I'd
in
be
that
working.
same awkward way.
Yeah.
Good.
But the point that I was trying to make to them, and I guess myself, and the facepalm moment, is that we don't, the idea is not really the important thing, and often the idea doesn't even look that good in the moment. A lot more of success is, might be more to do with things like luck and timing than it is about the inspirational idea. And I guess that's the point that I was trying to get across.
I mean, you've jumped ahead and you've already gone to the part, that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump all around, but the part where you and Shane are thinking about it. But one of the sort of, I guess, pivotal things that happens in your life is you meet Shane. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit, like, how did you guys become connected? Did you immediately know that this was going to be a, what's it now, 30-year connection? What was it about that partnership that just clicked?
Yeah, so, well, I guess the thing about the partnership, we didn't meet to become business partners. We met in Pietermaritzburg. We were in a church together there. I was working with someone who's in the room here, so there's people from all parts of my history. I was working in Pietermaritzburg, and then Shane moved down to Cape Town, and in beginning of 2001, and I decided I wasn't going to go for any sort of business reason. I was going to go because he had moved to start a church in Cape Town. And so I came down in 2002, and I must be careful how I say this. My current wife, Debbie, she is now my wife. She wasn't my wife when we drove down in 2002. So we arrive here, and I carry on working for the Pietermaritzburg company, but I'm here for other reasons. And Shane and I really connected on all sorts of other things, not necessarily let's start a retail empire together. And I think that we sort of almost stumbled into a partnership that became this 30-year partnership, which makes it, a lot of people want to know, well, firstly, how do you find a partner? What makes a good partner? And the honest answer is I don't really know. But in hindsight, in retrospect, I can identify some of the things that I think made us work really well together. And one of them, we're actually talking in the car on the way here, was how similar our life situations were. For example, we both had no money. And his kids are a little bit ahead of mine, but early on we had young kids and no money, and he had been working for the church, but that was being closed down, and so we needed to start something new together. And he was slightly more on the design side, and I was on the tech side, but we had a passion for this sort of online marketing type of industry. We were compatible in many ways, like being on time, properly on time all the time, and we can travel together.
Don't be late for Andrew.
Yeah, no, don't be late for Shane. He's taught me well. Yeah, and so there were things that worked together. That when it came time to let's start a business, that became quite a lot easier. And we have all these things in common, but we also have the things that we're very different at. And one of them is that Shane is really good at naming companies. He comes with Yuppiechef, and I think that's a terrible name.
Lucky the URL isn't available.
Yeah, lucky Yuppiechef.com wasn't available, Shane. But then it did become available, and of course he was right. And his ability to choose products, to see some international brand of kitchen tool and say, like, that's the one we should import. And he sees in me the value in being able to look at a spreadsheet and go, like, column L is wrong. And that compatibility plus differences has, I think, been what's made us work well together.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And one of the things that's quite hard to do is to get Shane to betray you. But I have. And so you've mentioned some of the things you really like about Shane. And so I asked Shane what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Right, so we're going to see how many out of 3 you can get out of what is quite meta. What you think Shane thinks your strengths and weaknesses are. Right?
Tell me.
No, well, I will tell you if you get them right or wrong. He didn't write Excel, so I'll just add Excel. Okay. All right.
It's actually funny because at someone's birthday recently it was a talent show, and I suggested I'd come on stage and do a budget on stage in Excel, but they didn't choose me.
You're playing to your people here. All right. Do you want to go? Do you want to see if you can get, what would, apart from Excel, what would just one of the strengths? This is a very hard question. Okay, you're busy failing the job interview. Okay, maybe you can talk about the weaknesses. I'll give you some. He has great sporting analogies, right? There you go. Instinctively looks out for others before himself. And then the main point, can process and analyze information like nobody else, can make complex simplified. Do you want to have a go at the weaknesses, or shall we just skip over that? Let's skip over that. One of them is camping. Right? All right, but that's probably a little too on the nose. Okay, all right.
And cooking, maybe.
I asked him what he thought your favorite Yuppiechef product that you ever got was? There are two
That I got.
that you got.
Okay, the coffee machine and the KitchenAid mixer.
Were there any others?
I mean, there's many. There's many. Which one do you want to say?
All right, I think the Uni pizza oven.
I didn't get. Oh no, I didn't get that. That's what he said
That was
my
just your
favorite
favorite product that you
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
stopped
you didn't
on.
ask the question
Okay, I asked the question wrong. It's on me. Right, let's get back on track. Okay. All right. So you kick off in your lounge. Shane picks the name. The URL becomes available. Yuppiechef is born, and you start writing cards. How do the cards start?
Yeah. So we launched in August 2006, and the first sale was to Shane's dad. And the first Bug Zapper sale had been to my mom, so it did. The trend had continued.
Business is booming.
Business was booming. And the second sale was to a friend, and the third sale was to someone. The first 8 sales were to people we knew. And it took until November 2006, and then Denise buys from us. And I said to Shane, do you know who Denise is? And he says, no. And I said, I don't know who Denise is. And someone, and I mean, you can laugh and you can go like, oh, someone has gone in 2006 to a website that they have never heard of before, that no one they know of has ever shopped on before, and very few people are shopping online. And we didn't have credit card facilities, so they've added to cart and then they've EFT'd into our bank account, and they're trusting that this thing is going to arrive on their doorstep. And most of you here have probably bought online this week, but no one bought online in 2006. And we thought, what do we do? Like, how do we make this some personal experience? And there's a chapter called Dear Denise in the book because it's talking about this. And we had the idea of if we handwrite something, if we write Dear Denise, a letter, a white piece of paper inside an envelope, and we say, thank you for shopping with us, that we are, and we sign it with a name from Shane, that it is going to show that there are humans on the other side of the internet, and that if something goes wrong, it's not that Yuppiechef was this automated factory where a robotic arm picked something off the shelf and dropped it on the conveyor belt, that there were real humans on the other side. And it really, really worked because Denise never shopped again.
Again, public service announcement. If you know someone from Denise who shopped once from Yuppiechef in 2006.
I know her surname, but I think there's probably rules against saying it out loud. Debbie, my wife Debbie, tried to get Denise to come to one of these events and was going to be one of those Oprah moments where we go, Denise! But we cannot find her, so we don't know where she is. My good version of the story is that she immigrated just after that sale. She didn't have a chance to buy again.
It's like, this handwriting is terrible. So I mean, the one thing you don't go into, I love this idea of showing the humanity, and it's even more relevant now with how much non-human there is around. But did you realize when you wrote the second letter, how many letters you were committing yourselves to the second order?
Yeah, and it was sacrosanct. I think we stopped writing in every single order many, many years later. But it really would hold up the order. The order would not leave the warehouse until there was a card. And we employed full-time card writers, but other people would fill in a lot within customer service. But then even near the end of my time at Yuppiechef, I was trying to write 5 cards a week. So it became a thing of this is what we do. At one stage, we did try and stop it, Shane and I, because we felt it had become a bit sort of routine and a bit rote. And the point was not the cards. The point was showing we're people, and could we show it in some other way? But that got shot down, and we kept on writing. So no, I mean, and I don't know what the numbers were, but I know it was more than 1 million that were written, at least in my time there. And it was. I was actually talking to Paul about this today, where I think we still to this day sort of what is it that everyone here today they're here because of Yuppiechef, the word, the idea, the brand. They're not here because I wrote a good book, because you don't even know if it's a good book. None of you have read it.
It's a good book. It's a good book.
So there's something about the brand that is Yuppiechef that attracts people to it, and I don't think it's just the cards, but there was something in the intent behind the cards that then spilled over into everything else. And when we employed people to come and join us, and everyone would write within their first week, maybe their first day, they would write a card to a customer, and they got a little badge which says, I write cards for Yuppiechef. And it was this, it it was what it represented, but also what it showed everyone who worked there, how important this was. And we would tell the story of Denise and the First Order, and so it's all wrapped together. You know, it's the snake eating its tail. Which one is which? I don't know. Was it the cards that caused that, or was something else that caused the cards? But so no, we had no. Well, let me go back a step. When you said, did we know this is what was going to happen? We wanted to stop selling our time by the hour, which meant that we had to sell 150,000 Rand a month in products at 30% margin, was 50,000 Rand. That would cover my whole family, Shane's family, all of our other expenses. I think maybe we even had one employee. And that was it. And that was flags, bud zappers, rat zappers, Yuppiechef, everything, all together.
All the hits.
All had to add up to 150,000 Rand. And we had no ambitions for this to be anything huge. So we weren't at that time going like, but what if we've got to write 3,000 cards in one day? Like, we didn't think like that. That wasn't where it was going.
Yeah, it was just happening organically, and a million cards later. One of my favorite stories in the book is how you steal Valentine's Day from Woolworths. Seems like an incredible lucky break. So I'd love you to tell that story, but also talk a little bit about how you think of luck in the business journey.
Yeah, so 2010, it was a Sunday night, the 1st of February or 31st of January, and Shane sees a photograph of a poster outside of Woolworths that's to do with their Valentine's campaign, and it was in the days where it was one of those sort of tweet and wins, which I don't even know if they still exist, but you know, tweet your love for Woolworths or for your Valentine's, I can't remember. But anyway, the point was that they had Woolies Lovebirds today, but they had bought the wrong domain. Well, they had bought Woody's Love Bird, but they bought Woody's Love Birds. And so their advertising was the wrong domain. And Sunday night, Shane messages me this, and we buy the domain that they
Amazing.
that they had misspelled. And on Monday morning, we gathered together, and Mike is in the room. Mike over there. So when we get together, there's probably, 5 of us. And we go like, hee, this is what we've done. and Mike says, why don't we do something for charity? Why don't we, we'll ransom the domain back to them. What our community raises, donates to charity, Woolies mismatch, and then we'll give it back. And it starts quite slowly, but it ends up becoming a really big thing. There's a chapter on in the book to go through all the details, but it gets a lot of press in TV and radio and magazines, and we win a gold Lurie for it, best viral or guerrilla marketing, and it became something really big. And what was interesting about that time, in our size, we're not quite in the lounge, we're bigger than the lounge, we're in our first office, but there's a handful of people, and there started being this rumor that we had colluded with Woolworths, that we had got together to work on this campaign, and we're like, there's 5 of us, and there's 50,000 of them. We're not colluding on anything, and it was an amazing lucky break, but we acted on that luck because Paul and Shane and I, who were the shareholders at the time, were in the room together making the decision. There was no legal department, there was no sort of layers of bureaucracy and an outside agency. We just made that decision right then, and we could act on it. So it was luck, plus we acted on it, plus we had nothing to lose. We were so small, what could go wrong? And so yeah, at the end of it, we didn't make any sales because of Lovebirds, and so I talk a little bit about the idea of looking for a silver bullet, looking for the one thing that tipped the edge, and we were going flat, and then we appeared on Oprah, and then we were through the roof. That doesn't really happen. It didn't happen for us, but all of those little things added together, and I think Lovebirds was a big part of our long-term success. And one of the concepts that I have come to believe is that no businesses are successful without big dollops of luck. But a lot of them don't stand business long enough to get that luck. So this is 2010. We'd started in 2006. Shane and Paul and I still weren't making a salary from Yuppiechef. We were still selling our time to web clients and other people, and we had employees, we had offices, we had stock, but we weren't making enough to do that. And if we had in 2006 said, right, we're going to give this 1 year, 18 months tops. We're going to take money out of the bond or whatever we're going to do, and if it's not working in that amount of time, we're going to have to shut it down. We would never have got to the Lovebirds campaign. We've never been able to get those moments of luck. And 5 years after starting, we could finally close down everything else, the web clients and the other retail sites, and just focus on Yuppiechef.
Yeah, I love that idea of surviving for long enough to get lucky. There's a Vince Lombardi quote, the American football coach. He says, "We didn't lose, we just ran out of time," right? And that really feels like it to me. I mean, one of the themes that runs through so much of the book is you feeling like you need to keep a brave face. You're appearing on all these shows, winning awards, Yuppiechef's famous, while at the same time, actually, there's an inner turmoil. It's really, really, really tough. I'm interested in how you reflect on that now, this sort of dualism of the CEO role you had to play with the public face, and then that what was really going on.
Yeah, so someone who has worked with us and for us for a long time read the book recently, just in the last few weeks, and she had some interesting feedback, because she said, I was there in 2012 or 2014 or whatever, when you talk about this event or that event, and I had no idea that was happening. And we have this, people talk about a duck swimming on the surface of the lake, and you don't see how hard the feet are paddling. But I didn't really know what to think about that, because one of our values was integrity, and the way we defined integrity is being the same all the way through, being the same on the inside and the outside. You know, you don't be all sweet to the customer and then slam the phone down and swear at them. You're operating with integrity, and so how are we leading this company in a way where publicly, well, at least in front of the team, I'm saying everything's fine, and then in my journals I'm saying everything is not fine. You know, I'm actually leading with integrity. And can I tell a joke? I'm not very good at jokes.
I would love you to try and tell a joke.
Okay, I'll tell a joke. That's how you know it's a good comedian, when they set it up like that.
Yeah, it's a good setup.
Okay, so there's a captain, and he's on a ship, and out in the middle of the sea, and he sees on the horizon a pirate ship, and he says to his first mate, "Go get my red shirt." And the first mate says, "Why your red shirt?" He says, "There's going to be a battle, and if I get cut in this battle, I don't want my crew to see me bleed." So he gets his red shirt on, and the pirate ship comes, and there's a fierce battle, and he does get cut, but they manage to fight off the pirates, and the pirate ship skulks away into the distance, and he says, "Well done, men, we fought well, we fought bravely." And then he looks the other way, and he sees 3 pirate ships coming from the other direction, and he says to his first mate, "Go get my brown pants."
In the second edition of the book, that joke's going to be there.
So this is the thing, you know. I ask myself as a leader, should we be hiding our blood from our crew? Yeah, or should we be being honest? Should I arrive on a Monday morning and say, "Gee, guys, you will never guess how low the bank account is, but it seems unlikely any of you are going to get paid this week"? You know, is that how we should lead? Is that how we want our leaders to be? Are we sort of all in on this game where we just, our leader says we're doing well, but actually we know we're not, but we like the game. I don't know, and so I didn't write this book to answer those questions. There's not a chapter said, how you should lead. I'm writing the book to show other people who are leading to go like, yeah, this is pretty tough, and you probably feel this as well, and don't look at the other leaders who seem to have it all together and think, well, it's only me who's struggling. And I didn't quite realize that there might also be a benefit in people that work within companies or being led. I mean, we're all being led in some aspect of our life, even if it's at the local hockey club or whatever it is. But to also, for those people to kind of realize that their leaders are human as well. And even the ones where it seems like there's this public success story are actually going through a lot of doubt. And maybe that gives empathy for others and empathy for ourselves, and maybe that is a good thing. I don't know. That's what the book's about.
Well, I think you've got a good taste of the book in just telling the story without trying to preach the lesson, right? And is it hard when you're writing a book like this to avoid getting preachy, or to avoid like vindicating and showing how you were right in that process?
No, I think that over the years I have been very allergic to preachy books and preachy people, and the idea that there are 7 quick answers to leadership or whatever it might be. I like reading stories. I like reading business biographies. I kind of struggle a lot with with business textbooks or whatever you might call the other version. In fact, one of the editors that we sent this to said it should change to be, a book of lessons, or even at the end of each chapter have the things that you learned. And I no, that just doesn't feel like me, because I don't want to read a book like that. I want to read a story and then apply it how I think it should be applied.
I mean, I think that's so good, and I think it's come through so well, because the lessons are there to learn and apply for anyone who wants to learn them, but also that graciousness with which you treat yourself. If I am to offer a reflection on the style, it does feel like you're pretty ruthlessly honest with yourself, but gentle with all the people around you. Is that something you intentionally did, or was it just because of the number of lawyers that exist in the world?
I think it was actually even more extreme than that. And one of my friends who's in this room also read it and said, I think you haven't created enough whole characters. You haven't created enough characters that actually have good and bad, or have sort of stories where it maybe didn't end well. So what I did in some of the first drafts, I'd say, this person came along and here's their name and this is what they did, and they were fantastic. And then you never hear from them again, but you get some anonymous person who leaves, 3 chapters later. Because I don't want to say that it didn't work out.
You do know if the name's mentioned, it's going to go well.
Well, no, but not anymore. I did change some of those and put it back in, but that's difficult because I'm telling my version of the story, and it might not be how they understood it. It might not even be what the reality was. And I can't change the names of the characters because everyone knows. If I say the person in this role at this time, even if I change their name, they'll know, I'll know. And so it was difficult. There are no names changed except for one outside company that I changed the name of, but everything else is the name. It is the first name, but they will know, and people around them will know. And so I did try and change some people. Like Sam, one of the characters in the book, he read it and he said, I think you should add back that fight we had, because I think people need to hear about that. So I did. The characters that we had the most friction or the most fallout, I tried to get at least some of them to read it and say, is it okay if I leave this in? But that is a tricky thing about writing a true book with named characters that I still would like to be friends with on some level.
Yes, and that's where it is quite useful to have the journals to jog your memory. Well, you mentioned the company that was trying to buy. One of the incredible seasons that Yuppiechef goes through is when they take tiger money. And they take venture money, and suddenly you're going to America and you're going to growth conferences, and it's growth or die. How do you reflect now with a bit of distance on taking venture capital money and that season of Yuppiechef's life?
Yeah, we were very naive. So 2011, we can pay our salaries. We're growing very fast, but we're not really holding a lot of stock. We don't have physical stores. And I guess there's sort of some sense that can we keep growing forever? Because of the idea of a winner-takes-all market. So if you run a dry cleaner in Newlands, you're not competing against the best dry cleaners in Johannesburg or Bloemfontein or even the City Bowl. There's a physical locality to a lot of businesses which kind of ring fences them. But online businesses, including retailers that sell physical goods, have potentially, you're competing against everyone in the whole country. So if we're doubling every year, but a new kitchen tool startup comes along that triples every year, they'll pass us pretty quickly and we'll go to nothing. So we have this idea that we have to grow really quickly regardless of whether we want to or not. And Tiger comes with their US dollars and says, we will give you lots of money to grow really quickly, to buy stock, to open warehouses. And we say no multiple times to them. And it is quite funny how naive we were about who these characters were and what they were offering. But eventually, so Lee, who was the principal there, he sat with us and said, "Please, it's my birthday. Take my money." And
oh well, it's your birthday.
Okay, well, we'll take your money then. So there was this. It was a reluctance, and a reluctance based on all sorts of things. One of the things is what pressure will come when someone else is telling us what to do? Will they want us to do things, grow quicker or do it differently to us? Will it feel like cheating? This was an interesting one. You know, if you play Monopoly and you get given a whole lot of money from the bank and then you win, you know, if life is a bit of a game, will it feel like we've cheated the game?
The first e-commerce business ever to think getting venture capital funding is cheating.
Yeah.
So we should suffer like real artists.
So I think we had all of these emotions that were rooted in fear and pride and ruthless independence and all sorts of things. But we did take their money, and I think that it was. I don't have any regrets. I don't regret decisions that I've made in the past, but it certainly was a watershed moment, because taking the money in 2011 set us down a path of we have to grow really quickly, but also. No one gives you millions of dollars without wanting many more millions back. And there's only two ways that happens. The one is you get dividends, but we were not a company that was going to give dividends, because we would always be growing with stock in stores. Well, not for a very, very long time. So the only other way is that we were going to sell the business. And so in 2011, when we take that money, we effectively decide we will end up selling Yuppiechef. And so people, I'm not jumping to the end, but people ask us, you know, why did you sell the Mr. Price in 2021? And part of the answer is we actually decided in 2011. And that was a decision which we took, but I think we were a little bit, we pushed that aside a bit. And as the years carried on, we went to 3 of their big conferences in New York and experienced how big things could be when they're fueled with the jet fuel of money. But the reality was that we were really torn between we're going to grow this thing and we're going to sell it, as opposed to we actually like working here and we like these people and we like earning a salary from it, and it was, I don't know how far you want me to jump ahead here, but it
jump all the way.
So when it comes to 2018, which is about 7 years after Tiger initially invested, they wanted out. And we kept telling them, yeah, it's fine, we'll find someone, but we weren't trying that hard. And so someone else offered to buy their shares, and we didn't like this someone else, which is why their name has changed in the book. And we found our own person to buy Tiger shares, and that was Sam Paddock. And that was a much more deliberate. He says, I will buy Tiger shares so that you don't become part of this other group, but we're making a very deliberate 5-year plan to sell the business. So 2018 to 2023, this is where we're going, and this is how we'll do it. And he had sold his company, Get Smarter, a year, well, maybe 2 years before that. And so he knew what it took, and he really helped us put the things in place in terms of the team and the structures and the processes to get to that place. And it was actually ended up being much quicker than that, because COVID accelerated things and it headed towards the sale. So that journey of taking Tiger's money certainly sped up the roller coaster ride in really good ways. And there's some amazing years, that 2011 to, I don't know well, let's maybe say 2016, because interesting things happened then as well. In that time where we're growing fast, we win the South African e-commerce awards, I think 6 times in a row. We're getting lots of publicity things. We're not profitable because we are burning that venture capital money, but we're on this wild ride of growth and acceleration, which did have its price to pay.
Well, you call it the roller coaster. I've also heard you describe it as the retail casino, where you're forced to go double or quits every year. I mean, this feels like a extremely challenging emotional situation to constantly be putting yourself in. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, maybe better than a casino is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Do you remember that program? So you answer the first question for 1,000 Rand, and then Jeremy Magg says, you can take that 1,000 Rand and you can walk away now, or we can go for the next question for 2,000 Rand. But if you get that one wrong, you leave with nothing. So that's the double or quits bet. And so every year you're choosing to put it all back on the line. And the way that worked for us in retail was just that we were a cash-hungry business, that we are, particularly around 2017, we opened the first store in Willowbridge. Stores cost money to open, and stock costs money to hold. And so whatever we have, well, we're not going to leave it in the bank and earn whatever interest rate. If we buy stock or if we put it into stores, we get to accelerate that growth further. But it also means that we're living very close to the edge, or maybe a little bit below the edge for every year. And that that brings a lot of pressures. You know, there's times when we drop too far below that where we have to take money out of our bonds, Jane and I and Paul, and put it into the business. Sam comes along and he becomes part of that as well after Tiger left. Tiger never took money out of their bonds. You know, they
Not their vibe.
They said we were fully funded and it was up to us now. So that was before. So we're living every year like right at the edge. And then COVID comes in March 2020, and 27th of March, we receive a whole lot of stock from suppliers, and then we close the warehouse doors, and they expect to be paid for that stock, but we're not allowed making sales. And 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st of March, we actually had negative revenue because the orders that we hadn't been able to ship from the previous few days, we have to refund customers. So we need that money at the end of the month to pay people, pay suppliers, pay staff. And we have nothing, and there is nothing in the bank, and that's when we sort of took the pot plants home for COVID lockdown. We thought this might be it. We played double or quits, but now this really is it. And I think that feeling, what ended up happening through 2020, which ended up leading to the sale. We didn't sell from a place of weakness. We actually came through COVID relatively well because online shopping and cooking at home became something big. But I think that
once the government allowed you to buy things,
once we got through that, we could negotiate. We could negotiate a sale well. But I think in the back of our minds was the idea of Yuppiechef is too important, and we put too much into this, and there's too many lives that depend on it for it to be subject to this double or quits game. It needs to find its permanent long-term home, and that became perhaps the final motivator that we needed.
Such an interesting rationale for the sale to get it out of the double or quits game into a share capital home. I mean, it's documented publicly and in the book. You sell it to Mr. Price, you stay with it for another year. I'd love your reflections. Many startups that get consumed by large corporates struggle. Why is it so hard for a corporate and a entrepreneurial business to coexist and partner to like that? Or why does it go so pear-shaped so often when they're acquired? Without referring specifically to the Yuppiechef and Mr. Price situation.
Look, I think maybe you got to be careful with the wording of your question there. I think the entrepreneurial founders, it often doesn't work out. It doesn't necessarily mean that the business doesn't work out. I'm not very close to Yuppiechef now, but they seem to be doing well. They've got 25 stores. They're growing. And the latest results that were announced last week seem to be positive. But Shane and I aren't there. And a lot of the team who are there with us are also not there. So I don't think it's necessarily the entity, but I think it does take a different type of person, a different mindset to start something from a lounge than it does to run something much bigger with hundreds of employees and stores. You know, this is the book starts with me dropping out of university after 3 months, and I'm the type of person who really doesn't like doing things because someone else says you should do them. I need to do things because they make sense, because it's logical, because that's the best route. And I think quite quickly, I was within that year, I was doing things which there might be some logic within a bigger company, but I just couldn't see the logic to it because we hadn't operated like that. Why was that particular thing needed? Whether it was a report or a way of working, a way of doing things, I was like, but that doesn't make sense. And I don't know how to get an answer to that, but I also don't know how to tell my team that when they say, well, why are we doing this? And I have to say, I don't know. We're doing it because I've been told to do it. I couldn't operate in that way, which doesn't mean that way is wrong. It's just wrong for me because I also couldn't, operate at university. It doesn't mean university is wrong. So it was. I think it was more to do with the makeup that part. The type of people who in 2006 say, let's sell kitchen tools online, have to look at a world that's operating in one way and say, there is another way for the world to operate, and so we're gonna, that's fine, but we're gonna do this over here. And I think to operate within a much bigger company that has all of its sort of governance requirements and its shareholder requirements and all those things, you don't really get to do that very much. I don't think that's what people want. It's like, this is the way and you should do it because that's the way to do it. And that's just not who we are.
I think that's a fantastic answer. and almost certainly not worth any litigation. All right, well, I think, look, there's so many great anecdotes from the book, but I'd like to get a little bit meta, sort of pull back a little bit as we come into land. You and Shane have worked together since before Yuppiechef. A big part of the book is you, Shane, and Paul as equal shareholders. Now you've come together again to publish the book. I'd be interested in what's it been like, the three of you working together again, and how's the way you work together changed, and now that you're at a different life stage?
Yeah. So, I mean, as I was saying right now, we don't like to be told what to do, and I did pursue. See, even this.
You struggle with the I's and the we's.
I struggle with I. Like, I don't actually refer to this as my book. I refer to it as the book or our book because. But I did approach some publishers in what we would call the traditional way of working, and like most other things, I thought, no, we can do this. But actually, the reason I could say that is Paul's part of the reason. He had read it in July. Shane and I have. Well, Shane's been reading this over the years, but Paul was one of the last year July readers, and he said, let's do this together. And he's got experience with layout and with print and that side of the production, and between the two of them with all of the packaging and the way that it's going to work, and between the three of us with our network and who we know in the industry, and it was a way, the three of us working together was a way of us saying, let's take on a project that means that we're not going to hand it over, we're not going to hand control over to it's a big publisher who's going to dictate the way that things work, and also we get to learn from this, and I've learned an enormous amount about books and publishing and printers and marketing and promotion, and it's been a good project because we're in it together, as in, like, we really do. Well, we feel like this is our book. It does have my name on the cover, and I do have a bit of a veto right when it gets a little bit tense between us. But it's been a reflection, I guess, of working together and where how young we were in 2008 when we got together, and so we still have these combative discussions and disagreements, but I like to think that we've moved further down the road in a lot of ways to get to where we are now, and the attention to detail that the three of us bring. So in our different ways, from each word that's written to the way the cover is, to the way the pages are. I mean, I'm on a WhatsApp group there's the three of us, and they were just debating the drop cap. So the big letter at the start of a chapter, the really big one. And Shane says, I think it needs to go up or down, one of the directions. I don't know. And Paul sends a before and an after, and he says, how's this? And Shane says, perfect. And I go, which one was the before and which one was the after? So there's an immense amount of attention to detail that any one of us working on this wouldn't have seen all of those things, because we each bring something different, and I think that really is our definition of team, and in that way, it's been a really good project. I mean,
it strikes me that you quite unusually have complementary perfectionisms, right? That you're all perfectionists in your different way, which you would think would clash, but somehow has meant that you work incredibly together. You spoke about the many things you learned about publishing and marketing and those things. In the process, this 4-year process of writing the book, what have you learned about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been the most, when I said earlier that I wrote it for, maybe let's say I wrote it for my kids, or I wrote it for the people who have been involved in the Yuppiechef story that might not have known the whole story, and then I'd sort of say, well, maybe it's actually for all business leaders, or maybe it's, but actually in writing it, I realized that it was probably most impactful for me, and how it helped me think through my whole life. That's how we started this interview. Was how does reading journals, but more, I guess, process and writing, what does it reflect back on us? And I think to see each day, I think and this ends. I mean, I think I'm probably most proud of the epilogue, the very last chapter, because that probably does wrap up my learnings, but to look back, particularly on, say, my 19-year-old self and what he's going through, and realize, like, but I know it turns out okay. And so the 19-year-old self, when I was working, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to do really well at this job in Pietermaritzburg, and then I reflect now and I say, well, what am I doing to myself now? You know, in reflecting on that, then what would 20 years time say about who I am now? And I think that's been one of the richest learnings from the book, is to try and more have more patience, more grace for myself, and not just for other people.
That is fantastic. You have drawn me to your 19-year-old self on the epilogue, and it's one of my favorite quotes. So we're gonna have a last question here. This is Andrew Smith, November 1999, journal 19. I smell burnout on the horizon, almost catastrophic. I need a break. I'm only 19. What a pathetic loser. I've got the perfect job and I'm still complaining. What's wrong with me? Your kids are now a similar age to what you were there. If they came to you with as compelling idea as Pots and Pans by EFT on the internet, or even Bug Zapper or Flags, what would your advice be to them?
Flags. It was always Flags.
Flags.
And that gap is still there.
It's still there. Well, Andrew.
Do you want a serious answer to that?
Yeah, I want a serious answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I want a serious answer. Yeah.
My boys are both studying engineering at Stellenbosch, and I would be very. It would be very awkward if they said they were dropping out.
You wouldn't give them the support your mom gave you.
My mom, my parents, both of them were incredibly supportive at the time, and I think that things worked out for me, but not because of individual decisions. You know, don't copy me dropping out of university, or don't copy e-commerce. But what I would say to them is definitely don't do things just because other people are telling them to do it. So I think if they reflected and they said, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, it's not aligning with what I'm best at, it's not aligning with what I'm passionate about, then it would be a yes. But it would be tricky for me to support them, for sure. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I want to say thank you so much for the huge effort you put into writing this book, the honesty and authenticity which it feels like it's been written. It's just a fantastic, fantastic read, and I feel like it's a gift to all of us. So thank you so much. Andrew Smith.